Alright, we're heading into the bulk of this project here. It's kind of gotten down to hammer time, so let's just knock this out and get things working. What we need to do is first define out our worker function, at least half of it, and then set up all of our settings and define models and everything else so that Django can connect to the database and can actually serve up some kind of web page. And then once all that's done and the database is constructed and working, we'll come back to our worker function and finish it out with the code to start writing data to the database. So to begin, I would recommend that you go to the Weather Underground site, sign up for an API key under the API site, and save that somewhere, because we're going to be, if you're following along, you're going to need your own API key. So this is the API endpoint that we're going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here. And I need to import a couple of things. So let's paste these in. We're going to use requests, psychopg2, psychopg2 extras, date time, and some logging for some basic logging for the database connection. There's also two that I'm going to import that you are not going to use. So do not use these. This is just for me. I have in this keys.py, I have my API token and my database password that I don't want to share with you in here. So I'm importing them in here so that I can use them throughout my code without you seeing them. But you're not going to do that. You're going to type yours in. So we're going to define a fetch data function. And you're going to go ahead and you're going to do API token equals, I'm going to put your token here. So whatever your token is that you get from the API, you're going to put it in here. I am not going to do that because I've already done that here, but you will need this line of code. Now we're going to define the URL. Let's give ourselves a space. And it's going to be all the way up to the API key plus the API token plus everything after the API key. There you go. Okay, so that's the correct URL for the sample data on Weather Underground for current conditions in San Francisco, California. That's what we want. We're going to do r equals requests.get, and it's going to be URL and .json. We want the JSON response, not the headers or anything. We just want the actual data. And let's print that out real quick and see what that looks like. We'll run this and actually call our function here. Okay, so it looks like current observation holds all of the data that we need. So we scroll through here, there's all kinds of stuff: wind chill, country elevation, weather. There's even like an icon for the weather, so it's clear there right now. So we're going to capture this. It's a dynamically generated icon based on the actual weather, so we'll get that. Precipitation, we'll get that. Whatever you want. Okay, so you just dig through here and find what you want, and each word you'll get. So we're going to do data equals r current observation, because that's where all of our data is in that dictionary here. So, and the key observation here. So we're going to do that, and then I went in and got all of the data that I want already picked out. Okay, so location, weather, the wind, which is a string, which is like northeast at 5 miles per hour. It's like an actual pretty string. Temp, humidity, precip, the URL for the icon, which we might use. And that's not typed right. Okay. And the observation time, which is also like this like nice pretty sentence type string. And that again is all just pulled from in here. If you don't understand what I just did, watch one of my videos on JSON or APIs, and all of this will make sense. Okay, I'm just trying to speed this up a little bit. So If we run this, there's no error code. So that means that our worker function is now able to connect and retrieve data into each one of these variables. If you're writing your own function with your own API, you need to make sure that whatever data you want saved in your database, you have a variable for each individual item, because that's what we're going to write into the database. So that's it for the worker function for now. We'll come back in a little bit and we'll write the piece that writes or persists the data into the database. But that'll be once the database is already created. So to create a database, we're going to use the tool called pgadmin, and that comes with Postgres, so fire that up. And during the Postgres install, you got a password that you had to set up. And we're going to use that. We're going to click on the localhost server here, type in our password, and look at our databases. There's a default database called Postgres. We want to add our own called weather. So to right click on databases, new database, call it weather, assign the owner as Postgres, which is like our admin account, and hit OK. And we can click on that, and under schemas, public, tables, this is like our layout. This defines the layout for our database. There's nothing in the table yet. There's no tables or columns or anything to define what type of data we're going to store where. We're actually going to build that out in our what's called a model in Django and then push that into the database. So you could do a new table and then do a new column and build it out within pgadmin if you were just going to use like a standalone worker function. But because we're going to use Django, we're going to actually use Django's built-in technology to kind of leverage that. So don't worry that this is empty. We're about to fill it up, and that happens under models.py. Models define what kind of data you're going to be storing and retrieving from your database, and that's going to look something like this. We're going to create a class called reading, and it's going to be of models.model. Okay, and reading is like what you send back to your views to sort of spit the data out onto the web page. So you remember whatever you call this, okay, because you're going to need that later. We're just going to call it a reading. It's like a temperature reading, and we're going to go through and essentially copy all of this over to here and then specify what type of data each one. So for location, and we have weather, and so on and so forth. So we're going to define all these out. So location equals models, and we have to specify what type of data it's going to be. Now, for everything other than, for all kinds of strings other than really big chunks of text, we're going to use the character field. Okay, so .char field, and you have to specify a maximum length for this as a parameter. And so for the location, it's probably under about 100 characters, so that should be fine. The weather is going to be, it just is like clear or cloudy, so that's going to be another one with the max length of maybe 20. Okay, like windy or I don't know, rainy, it's not going to be that long, so 20 should be fine. We have the wind string is going to be equal to same thing here, so let's just cheat a little bit. And we also have, there was temp, humidity, precip, icon, you are also going to do temp. Is we're going to do this as a models dot integer field, because that's the temperature is the only one that's an actual number. If we look at humidity, which is next, it has a % sign after the humidity reading, so it's technically a string, so we can't use that as an integer. We'll get an error. So that's going to be another character field with maybe 10. It's probably like 5 would be enough, or 4 even, but we'll make it 10. And then precip is another one. but we'll make that a length of 50 because that's like a stringified, like pretty print precipitation, so it's going to have a lot of information. The icon URL equals models dot. I think there's a URL field. We'll see how that works. Give it a shot. I'm not really sure. I've never used it before, but we're going to try it. And observation time is the last one, equals 100. There you go. So we've defined our model, and this is going to be used throughout Django to understand what types of variables are going to be reading from our database or writing to, and what they can and cannot contain, how long they can be, so on and so forth. So now that that's done, let's go into our settings.py and define out some actual settings here. So we need to tell Django where to find our database, and right now if you scroll down to databases, it's pointing to like a default SQLite database, which is kind of comes packaged in with Django, and we're not going to be using that. We're going to be using the PsychoPG2, the Postgres one here. So double click on that, and there you go. That's actually the interface to connect to the database. And then the name, we're going to get rid of that, and we're just going to put in weather, which is the name of the database that we created back here in pgadmin. And we also will need a user. That's going to be Postgres for now. It's going to change when we upload it to Heroku. A lot of this will change. We got password, and you're going to put in your password here. Whatever your password is for pgadmin, that's the password that you're going to use. I'm going to actually go back and import mine from keys that I did before. So you won't use this part. You will actually type in your password here, but not me, because I don't want you to see my password. That's all there is to it. And host, that's blank, so that defaults to localhost, and port, also blank, so it's going to use the default. I think it's 5432 is the port. Some of this will change. When we push this to Heroku, we'll copy their settings and paste it in here so that it can connect to the remote database instead of our local database. But for now, that will do. We also need to go to our installed applications here and add in our application that we're creating, which is called Station. Okay, and that just gives you the ability to utilize the stuff under your Station app within your Django application. If you don't put this in here, nothing's going to work. So whatever you've named your app, copy it here, you're good to go. And then lastly, we have to look at our template directory, and you see that it's blank, but it can't be. We have a template folder here. Templates will hold our HTML pages that will be rendered when someone goes to our website, and right now there's nothing there, so you're not going to get anything worth looking at if you fire up the server and go there right now. So we're going to actually create an HTML page there and flesh it out with some templating code to display all of our information. But we have to tell Django where to look, and that's going to be os.path.join. You've probably seen this all over the place. Base directory, which is like our base directory here, and templates. And you can see it's auto spelling it for us, so it's finding the folder. So that's good news that we're pointing it in the right direction. And this will tell Django when it serves up a web page, to the templates will be in here. And we built our models. Okay, so we have models. We have settings done. Now we have to define our views, which is essentially the data that can be passed over to the template, and it tells Django how to render the web pages that we're looking at. So we're going to get rid of everything in here and create our own view from scratch. and it's going to be from Django.template.response, import template response, and from station.models, which if you remember we just built that out under models, that's this, import reading, right? So we're importing our class from here. And that's to allow us to essentially pass all these variables that are pulled from the database over to our view so that we can pass that then onto our web page to be inserted as HTML ultimately. And so we've brought in the template response, we've imported the reading class. We have to define a function here. We're going to call it report. It's like a weather report. You can name this whatever you want. Just remember it because we have to use it later on. And we're going to say request and data equals reading. Okay, so here we're calling this class here, and we're going to use something called .objects. That would fetch everything, but we don't need that. We just want to get the last set of objects. So this particular command will pull the last entry into your database. So the last set of weather readings that we've taken with our worker program, we just want the last row. We don't, if you wanted to go back and get like an average of the last 5 things or whatever, you wouldn't use this .last, but we're just going to get the last entry to give us the most current results. So that's going to be there. And then we're going to do return template response request index.html. Okay, that's going to be a template that we're going to create here that's going to actually display all this stuff. And then we're going to pass in a dictionary that says data, and the value is data. Okay, so that's it. So this is our view, and this will essentially fetch data from the models, which fetches from the database, and push it over to index.html to be rendered when we go to our root site. So like mysite.com, it will render this index.html. Now, what else do we have to do? We have to define, actually let's name this something different. Let's call it home. There we go. So actually, I'm sorry, not there. Let's call this home. That might be a little more easy to understand. So that's like our home page, if you think of it that way. So again, you can name these whatever you want. You just have to remember what you name them. So we'll call that home. And now we have to, we're very close to the end here, but we have to tell, this is a web page that's going to be rendered, but we have to tell Django what site does a person go to that it gets kicked over to this page. And that's under the urls.py. And you're going to see something in here that says admin. Now there's an admin console to allow users to log into Django and like add and remove data to the database, but we're not going to be doing that because our worker is going to handle all that for us. So we're going to get rid of that. And in that place, we are going to paste in this, which is a regular expression, which means for just the root site, so they don't put any slash whatever in the URL, route them to our home view and execute this code here. Now you'll notice that we got a little error warning here because we have to actually import station.views, and there you go. So this, should all be coming together now. So if we go to just the launch the server and go right into it, that's the root. It's going to say, all right, go to the views, execute this, which says pull from readings and send that to index. So the readings is a model. All right, and we do need to create a template. We're going to do a new HTML file, call it index. I'm going to call this the title weather station, And in the body of our web page, we're just going to put a little paragraph that says, hello. All right, so we have all the pieces are here that we need now. So, that's pretty much done. Now we have to take our models and migrate this into our Postgres database. So this here is going to get converted into a table here so that it constructs out our column so we can start writing data to it. So to do that, there's two ways. We can do it by going to Command and going to PyCharm projects and going to weather app, and we need to get to basically the root folder for our project and find this thing called manage.py. And what we're going to type here is Python manage.py make migrations. And this will take all of the stuff that's changed in our Django setup and prep it to get pushed out to the database. So all these, if you modify any of these in your models, like you add another variable or you change the type, you have to make the migration and then you have to push it over into the database for it to update the database with the new columns to store the data. Now, if you're using PyCharm, you don't have to go through all this hassle. You can just go to Tools, run manage.py task, and it basically gets us to the point where we can just type in make migrations. It's already gotten to the point right here for us. So I'm just going to do it here. And it creates the first migration. That's the same thing that would happen if you ran it here. I'm just showing you, if you're not using PyCharm, you can do it through the command prompt. Okay, so then now that we've done that, we have to actually run migrate. And boom. So it's saying that it's done all this stuff and it's successfully pushed it. It would be the same thing here. After we ran it here, we would just do migrate and hit enter, and it would push. And it's saying there's no migrations to apply. Just want to show you that it works. So we've created everything that we need so far. We've defined out our models. We've pushed all that over into the database. And with any luck, if we refresh this, oh, there we go. All right, all the permissions and content and everything. And then we have this thing called station reading, which if we right click on the station reading and hit view data, we can view all the entries into the database. And there you go, we have a primary key, and then we have everything that we're trying to save. So that's it for this part of the video. When we come back, we're going to finish out the worker script and we're going to start building out our web page. All right, thanks.